Now let's move to our next topic, that is anonymous class. The question is, what is anonymous class? A class which doesn't have any name is known as anonymous class. Now the question is, when the class is not having any name, then how we will represent that class? So to represent that class, we always use its parent class or parent interface name. Means in every single time whenever you will define any anonymous class, it will always have some parent which is used to represent that anonymous class. Okay. Now my second question is, as we know that constructor have same name as its class name, and when anonymous class doesn't have any name, then how we will define constructor inside it? The answer is no, we cannot define constructor inside anonymous class. And the reason is the same, because anonymous class doesn't have any name. That's why we cannot define constructor, because constructor need to have the same name as its class name. So we cannot define constructor in anonymous class. Now the question is, what is the major advantage of using anonymous class? We are trying to understand this by using this implementation. Okay. Let's suppose I have an interface named base, and that is holding a method with the name of method. Okay. I want to utilize this interface. In general, if you want to use any interface, you have to follow two steps. Step number one, you have to define an implementation for that interface where you will override the method and define the body of that method. And step number two, you have to instantiate that implementation or that child class object, and then only you will be able to use that interface. You will be able to call the methods that define inside that interface. These two steps, again I'm repeating, step 1 you have to define the implementation, and step 2 you have to instantiate that implementation, and then only you will be able to use that interface. These two steps you must have to follow in order to use any interface or abstract class. Okay. Now here anonymous class came into picture. Using anonymous class, you can define the implementation of interface and can create the object of that implementation in same step only. Okay. And in that way, it reduces the code. If you'll see here, I also mentioned the same point here. An anonymous class is created and instantiated in same step. Okay, so now let's try to understand how we can create the implementation of this interface and instantiate in the same step using anonymous class. Let's see this implementation. Now in this implementation, again I have parent interface which is holding abstract method name with method, and then I am trying to create the implementation of this interface. How I am doing this? Simply, first of all, I am saying parent of parent in left side, and in right side I am saying new parent, and then using parenthesis, and then using curly braces, and then I am using statement terminator. Now here I am using new parent. It looks like I'm trying to create the object of interface, but as you guys know, we cannot create the object of interface, or we cannot even create the object of abstract class. So in both of those cases, if you will try to use new and use interface name or abstract class name, and then immediate after that, if you'll use parenthesis and then curly braces, it means that compiler is going to create the implementation for this interface internally. Okay. Compiler is going to create one implementation class for you for this parent interface, and in there it is going to override that method. Okay. So it looks like we are creating the object of interface, but internally it is going to create the implementation for parent interface, and then it is going to create the object for that implementation for you. And like, we were doing the same thing manually last time. In this implementation, we are creating the object by our own, and we are creating the implementation by our own. But this time, instead of doing this manually, compiler is going to do this for you. Compiler is going to create the implementation and going to create the object for that implementation. Okay. What we need to do is we simply need to override that method. How we will override? We will simply define the code here inside these curly braces. Okay. So I am defining that in my implementation, I want to override the method with this name method. I can also have other methods. As you guys know that in implementation you can have any number of methods. That's not a problem. But you must have to override that specific abstract method which is coming from the parent interface. So that's what I am doing. I'm overriding that method, and then after I can also have other methods if I want. Okay. So in this step, it is going to create the implementation for parent interface, override that method, and then going to create the object of that implementation class. Okay. And as you guys know that parent reference variable can hold child object reference. So when you are going to receive the child object reference here, that reference can be held into parent reference variable. And when I'll do this, when I call method, this method is going to check at compile time in interface, and runtime it is going to execute the overridden method. As you already know, this is known as dynamic binding. So if I run this, you can see here I am getting the output. So you can see I am creating the implementation and instantiating that implementation in same step. The code is now more reduced. Okay. Everything is now taken care by Java compiler itself. And this type of class which is not having any name, because this class is representing by parent name, this class is known as anonymous class. Here internally compiler is creating that class, and that is nothing but anonymous class. Let's summarize everything. What is anonymous class? Anonymous class is a class which doesn't have any name, and anonymous class doesn't contain any constructor as well. Anonymous class always represent by its parent, and anonymous class will create and instantiate in same step. And anonymous class will always define within a method or class level. Ultimately, it will always define inside another class, and that's why it is also comes under the nested class category. Okay, this is all about anonymous class.